Gli dicono da rete, sì, di certo, adesso gli scrivo subito.
Ok. Si lo sapete che non vi posso rispondere.
Tante campagne elettorali.
She had never lost before. Not a local election, not a national vote, not a confidence test. 3.5 years in power. Every single vote won. Until March 23rd, 2026. And when the results came in that night, something changed in Italian politics that had never changed before. Giorgia Meloni's aura of invincibility was gone. This is the story of the referendum she was never supposed to lose, and what the vote actually revealed about where Italy is heading next. Giorgia Meloni came to power in October 2022 with a promise. She would modernise Italy's judiciary. For decades, the Italian right had one target above all others: the magistrates, the judges and prosecutors who had spent 30 years bringing corruption cases against politicians, who had investigated Silvio Berlusconi, who had blocked government policies from the bench, who had, in Meloni's own words, become a political force inside an institution that was supposed to be neutral. She called them ideologically biased. Her ministers called them red-robed communists. And in October 2025, she finally moved. The Nordio reform, named after her Justice Minister Carlo Nordio, passed through Parliament. It proposed to split Italy's judiciary in two: judges on one track, prosecutors on another. A new disciplinary court, new oversight rules, new selection processes. The government said it was about impartiality. The opposition said it was about control. About giving Meloni's executive branch power over the very judges who were supposed to hold her accountable. There was one problem. The reform didn't reach the 2/3 majority needed to bypass a public vote. So it went to a referendum. And here is where Meloni made a calculation that would cost her everything. She tied her personal credibility to the result. At rally after rally, she stood on stage and told Italian voters, "This reform is necessary. This reform is right. Vote yes." Her campaign slogan was direct: "Modernise Italy." Analysts warned her, referendums in Italy are dangerous. They become votes on the government, not the question. Meloni didn't listen. And on March 22nd and 23rd, Italians voted. The turnout was 58.9%. That number shocked everyone. For a technical referendum about the structure of the judiciary, Italians were supposed to stay home. Instead, almost 60% went to the polls. And when the results came in, 53.7% voted no, 46.3% voted yes. The Nordio reform was dead. But something more important had happened, because the people who voted no were not all constitutional lawyers. They were not all passionate defenders of judicial independence. Many of them voted no to say something else entirely, something about Meloni herself, about Trump, about the war in Iran, about an economy that was still barely growing, about a government that had been in power for 3.5 years and had not delivered what it promised. Political analyst Pregliasco put it plainly. Meloni was facing what he called the Trump risk, appearing too close to a president who had become deeply unpopular in Italy. A president who was now fighting a war in the Middle East that Italians feared would drive up their already high energy prices. The referendum had been a technical question, but the Italian people had turned it into something else. An eviction notice said five-star leader Giuseppe Conte. People want to turn the page, he said, after 4 years. Elly Schlein, leader of the centre-left Democratic Party, was sharper still. She called the result a rejection of the government's arrogance, a vote to protect the independence of the judiciary from political interference. And the applause in the Parliament chamber went on for minutes. Meloni posted her concession on X that night. The Italians have decided, and we respect this decision. She called the result a lost opportunity to modernise Italy. She promised she would not resign. She promised she would complete her mandate through 2027. But the language was different now. Gone was the confidence of a leader who had never lost. In its place, something new. Acknowledgement, regret, defence. The language of a politician who now has something to protect. Because this is what the referendum actually revealed. Italy goes to the polls in 2027. For 3.5 years, Meloni had approached that election as the unbeatable favourite. Her coalition was stable. Her poll numbers were high. The centre-left was fragmented and weak. That calculus changed on March 23rd. Not because Meloni is finished. She is not finished. She will remain Prime Minister. Her coalition will hold. She will continue. But the image is gone. The image of the leader who always wins. The leader who cannot be stopped. The leader who broke every rule of Italian politics by staying in power and staying popular. That image took a vote on the structure of the magistrature and turned it into the most watched referendum in decades. And the numbers were clear. More than half of Italy said, not this, not now, not her way. In the days after the vote, 3 senior officials resigned from her government: Undersecretary Andrea Del Mastro, Cabinet Chief Giusy Bartolozzi, Tourism Minister Daniela Santanchè, who had been facing fraud charges for months and had refused to step down until Meloni publicly asked her to go. The resignations came quickly, too quickly for coincidence. Meloni was cleaning house, trying to reset, trying to show Italy that she had heard the message. But the question now is whether the message can be unheard. Because what the referendum exposed was not just a policy defeat, it exposed a gap between Meloni the image and Meloni the reality. The image, Europe's strongest right-wing leader, Trump's closest ally, the woman who had tamed Italy's infamous instability. The reality, a government with a stagnant economy, a minister under criminal investigation, a judiciary it could not control, and a foreign policy increasingly tied to an American president that most Italians had stopped trusting. The judges she had spent years attacking had just been defended by the Italian people. And the election that was supposed to be a foregone conclusion is now a real contest. We are watching. Because the files that come next, from the court cases, the coalition negotiations, the 2027 campaign, will tell us whether this was a turning point or just a warning. Subscribe to The Record Room, because the story of Meloni's power is not over, but for the first time it might be. But let's go back to the night of March 23rd, because there was one detail in the results that every analyst missed. The vote was not close in Rome. In the Italian capital, the city Meloni calls home, the city where her party was founded, the city where her government sits, the no vote was stronger than the national average. Roman voters, living in the shadow of the parliament, the courts, the ministries, they voted against her reform at higher rates than the rest of the country. That is not just a political number, that is a message from the street. From the people who see the government closest, who watch the ministers arrive in armoured cars, who read the court documents, who know that judicial reform in Italy has always meant one thing: protection for whoever is in power. Berlusconi tried it 30 years ago, he failed. Meloni tried it in 2026, she failed too. And now, 1 year before the election, she faces the same question every Italian leader eventually faces. Do you have enough left to win again? The answer, for the first time since October 2022, is genuinely uncertain. And that uncertainty, that single crack in the armour, is the most important political development in Italy in years.